Phil's putting a heck of a run together here. Let's see what he can do. Comes around that last right-hander, comes across the line.
That bright green 70 Chevelle 31.22 is Phil's best time so far today.
Car making its grand debut here this weekend. Roadster Shop chassis, obviously. Look at that thing just off the ground, ladies and gentlemen. I gotta tell you, that's Phil from the Roadster Shop in there driving that right there. Car owned by Barry Bloomquist, 62 Chevy Corvette. Jason, so stylish this car. Look at how smooth that car is and how it just hugs the ground.
It's a beautiful car. It's like a concept car. And then to be out there on the phone, it's awesome.
What do you mean by concept car?
It's got the attention to detail and all the handmade, it's the Detroit concept car.
All right, so the Roadster Shop 62 Chevy.
We designed our new fast track front suspension system from the ground up to be the ultimate front suspension. We started with our own geometry in order to get the correct caster, camber, roll center, everything that we felt would provide the best ride and handling and performance for a car.
In order to keep all that geometry intact, we've gone through and designed our own bushings and our own mounting systems for the entire suspension.
The industry standard is a polyurethane bushing that works great on smaller cars but tends to flatten out and have a lot of deflection when used in a performance application.
We use a Delrin bushing.
Delrin has zero deflection and it soaks up all the vibration, eliminating any feel from the road or road noise.
That bushing is made specific for this application. We sleeve the inner with a bronze oil-light bushing. This is a suspension that's designed, not to be for a show car, but to handle 100,000 miles. So it's made up of probably 100 components that are completely specific to this front suspension.
As important as all the suspension components are to the ride and handling, it's equally important how they're put together.
Everything on this chassis, as far as the brackets go, is mounted in a double shear manner, which means that the bolt's supported from both sides.
We use all grade 8 hardware throughout the entire front suspension.
All the bracketry on this is built as bulletproof as possible.
Both upper and lower control arms are built from thick wall, large diameter tubing to provide the most strength. Additional bracing and gussets have been welded in crucial areas in the control arms to increase strength and reduce flexing.
On the upper control arm, we've used a 4140 chromoly mount that uses a 2-bolt design.
The control arm is reverse mounted to the cross member, so you can simply loosen the nut, add shims to increase your caster, camber, and get your alignment settings where you want them. Our lower control arms are designed with a swept back rear portion in order to allow for wide tire clearance and full turn ratios. Our lower shock mount and sway bar mount are integrated into the lower control arm, built from strong 1/4-inch material.
The way we've located the shock in this front suspension is that it's as close to the ball joint as possible without any binding, what that means is that you get an accurate spring rate or motion ratios as close to 1-to-1 on this chassis, which means you can run a 500-pound spring where you may ordinarily have to run a 650-pound spring. Allows for a better ride, and it's a little bit easier on some of your components.
When it comes to the spindle of our suspension, we wanted to use the best available. The current products available in the hot rod industry simply weren't going to make it.
It's based around a Corvette C6 spindle, but the geometry is all unique to the Roadster Shop. What we've concentrated on quite a bit is to improve the camber gains over what some of the stock Corvette stuff is, just to make it a little more friendly to some of these heavier, larger vehicles. The rack and pinion on a stock Corvette, it's located about 3 or 4 inches higher than what our rack is, and what we've done is make a drop steering arm.
Our billet aluminum steering arm is made of 7075 T6 aluminum. The drop steering arm is designed for optimal oil pan and engine clearance and placement of the rack, and also eliminates any and all bump steer.
The rack and pinion on this, it's a fairly quick ratio. We offer it in a 20-to-1 as well as a 15-to-1 ratio. It's mounted in a double shear manner where that rack uses a good quality bushing, and it won't wear, it won't move side to side, and the bolts are fully supported. We use a spline front sway bar on this. It's designed to be as user-friendly as possible at the track and on the street, and even when assembling the chassis. We use a simple split collar that retains that sway bar.
On all our front suspensions, you can run up to a 10-inch wide wheel with our sway bar configuration.
Sway bar diameters range from 95 thousandths on up to a 250 wall sway bar, so it's fully adjustable for larger and heavier vehicles.
We chose the C6 Corvette N-Link because of its durability and proven performance.
A lot of these cars, when you get them lower to the ground, and that seems to be the trend, is getting ride heights lower and lower, well, it gets harder to turn a wheel inside of a fender. So the initial front end, we designed this as a 54.5-inch track width, this suspension kind of evolved, and it's now available in 2 track widths, a 54.5 and a 58.5 inch track.
The coilover is one of the few parts that we don't build in-house. So when looking for manufacturers to supply this, we wanted something that had proven race heritage, yet friendly street manners.
The shock that we've selected to use on this front end is an AFCO product. It's a great shock out on the autocross course and the road course, but it's very easy to tame it back and make it a great riding shock for the street.
We took into account the rigors of driving and what these cars will go through when designing this front suspension. Doing this, we felt the need for positive and negative bump stops to be placed on the chassis.
So that means that you're not relying on your shock to absorb the impact if the suspension does bottom out, and that'll protect the life of your shock and protect the performance of your shock. It also helps out because you're not hanging the suspension from the extended shock. You don't have to compress the spring to remove the shock. And again, that touches back to how easy it is to tune this at the track. You can do spring swaps in a matter of minutes and alter your ride heights very easily with a simple spanner wrench and just by taking the load off of the car.
The suspension system is designed to be driven in extreme situations and put through some serious abuse on the track.
Along with just the functionality and strength of it, each and every bracket on it's designed to look as good as it performs. And we try to carry that through our complete chassis design, so it not only functions great, but it looks pretty cool too. We're here at the Good Guys Columbus show, and we've got our new independent rear suspension. We brought it here to put on the new products display. Looking at today's exotic cars and most of the race cars of today, a solid axle is really a thing of the past. People go to great lengths to engineer front suspensions and never really get into the rear. So what we did is design our own geometry. It uses a C6 spindle in the back.
Several options were considered, including using a complete Corvette independent rear suspension. But with the wide track width, lack of strength in the center housing and half shafts, a stock Corvette independent rear suspension simply wasn't optimal to use under a 60s and 70s classic American muscle car.
Biggest thing about this independent rear is that it's actually the only one that is available currently that uses a true upper and lower control arm. So it's really not like your typical street rod style independent rear suspension that would be based off of a Jaguar or something like that.
By designing our own geometry and fabricating our own control arms and mount points, we were able to develop a narrower track width than what's commonly available utilizing stock Corvette components. One of the key advantages of going to an independent rear suspension is being able to optimize the roll center that you simply can't do with a solid axle rear end.
We actually kind of coupled it with the performance of our independent front suspension. So things like the camber gains, the negative camber gains on the rear and the camber curves are very similar to the front suspension, and we went to great lengths to match that. The roll center location, it works real well with where we've got it positioned in the front, so it really makes for a really balanced package if you couple it with the front suspension. It's a 58 3/4 inch track width, so it's the exact track width as our wider track front suspension.
This allows for a period correct deep dish wheel, still being able to run up to a 12-inch wide wheel with a 345 series tire on it.
The serviceability and design on this, that was a real big concern when building it. These cars get driven, springs get changed, and sway bars get changed and things like that. So we wanted to make sure when we designed it that everything was really easy to disassemble, easy to get out of the car if need be. If something were to happen to the third member, the gears, you can swap that out in a matter of 20-30 minutes.
Strength is always a concern in independent rear suspensions, so when considering our drive axle setup, we wanted something that was virtually indestructible. Strength is gained through large diameter chromoly 934 and 930 CV joints with high temp racing vented boots. Our drive axles are rated standard at 600 horsepower with optional 1000 and 1400 horsepower configurations available.
And again, it just takes a stock 9-inch carrier, so any 9-inch that you got, whether it be a nodular, just a standard 9-inch, it'll drop right in there.
All hardware throughout the independent rear suspension is grade 8. All brackets are mounted in a double shear manner. The outboard mounted brakes allow for easy rotor and pad changes and also offer countless brake options.
Uses a spline rear sway bar much like the front suspension, and again, that's something that at a track, at an autocross event, if you wanted to swap sway bars, that can be done in minutes.
Our fast track independent rear suspension is a true performance piece, not a hot rod suspension dressed up to look like a performance piece.
It's available as just a pod, just the way you see it here, that it can be put into really anything that a fabricator or a home builder wants to engineer it to fit into. And we do it in the first and second gen Camaros. It's currently available in the first and second gen Chevelles. The applications are really endless. If there's an application you've got that you want to fit it in, you could let us know and we'd be happy to work with you and get it in there. When this independent rear suspension was originally designed, the number one goal was to make it perform as well as possible. But the interesting thing about this, and one of the biggest advantages of it, is just to get it out on your everyday drive, to get out on the roads with it, get out on the highway, and in a cruiser, it's an outstanding improvement over a solid 9-inch rear end.
When we're talking about performance, we're really trying to incorporate every aspect of performance, from the actual way the car drives on a daily basis, how it performs just going down the road when you're cruising, the ride quality. All these things have been greatly improved over what a stock car would have ever been.
With the wheels moving independently, obviously, then the shock dampening, it's able to skate over bumps and imperfections in the road like a 9-inch solid rear end wouldn't be able to. We realized that although most of these cars are built for autocross, 90% of the drive time on them is out on the roads and driving to cruise nights and coming to these good guys events, and that's probably the most enjoyable part of this independent rear suspension, is that you will certainly notice a large difference in the ride quality of it.
We've gone to great lengths to design our Tri-5 chassis to be as easy an installation as possible. This is the only chassis on the market that there are absolutely no modifications to your body required whatsoever. We utilize all your stock bumper mounts, your core support mounts, the body mounts, designed everything to fit underneath the stock floor, so it's a matter of unbolting your original frame, sliding the new frame under, dropping it down, and bolting it back up. Big blocks, small blocks, LS motors all fit comfortably in the engine bay without any modification needed. Our adjustable trans mount is designed to accommodate all GM automatic or manual transmissions. The biggest difference between our Tri-5 chassis and anyone else in the industry is the actual frame rail itself. We're the only company doing a true 4x4 frame rail, one-piece design from front to rear. There's a lot of differences in how we build a frame compared to what others in the industry are using. Where others are using bent square tube or miter cut and welded square tube, all of our frame rails are hand built in-house, start with a inside, outside, a top and a bottom pattern. Those are fixtured in a jig, welded together. This allows us the ability to have a formed flowing frame rail that shapes around the car, has visually appealing lines and curves and bends to it. Something that looks custom that belongs underneath a custom car. We TIG weld every component on the chassis. TIG welding takes longer, it's harder to do, but at the same time, it's a better weld, it's got deeper penetration, it's visually more appealing, and when it comes time to do the paint and body work side of the frame, it's a lot easier to work with. This frame works under a convertible, hardtop, wagon, pretty much anything. Looking at this compared to a stock frame, the original frames for hardtops and sedans weren't strong enough for convertibles. The convertibles had to have a special frame from the factory. A lot of our competitors will tell you that if you're going to do a convertible, you need to have a special frame built for it because their standard frame isn't strong enough to handle the weight of a convertible body. So that kind of speaks volumes for what you're buying. If the new frame isn't strong enough to handle a convertible body, it's probably not that much stronger than an original frame was. The strength from our chassis comes from the 4x4 main frame rails, but a lot is added to it with torsional rigidity through our dual level tubular center cross member. Just like anything else we do, it has to look cool. So we added some unique features in there to, again, give it some detail when you're looking at the car from the underside and make it fit a custom car. We offer two different versions of the Tri-5 chassis. The first version is our standard hot rod cruiser style chassis, designed for the guy who just wants to go out and cruise the car and enjoy it. You get a lot more strength in the frame, you get a lower ride height to really give you a car that's gonna ride, handle, and go down the road great. What I'm standing with here is our Fast Track chassis, which is a performance-based suspension for the front and rear. That gives you a sports car suspension package underneath a American Icon classic Chevy. Now a lot of guys look at this and say they don't necessarily need a pro touring suspension for their 55 Chevy because they're never going to take it to an autocross, they're never going to run on a road course. When we're talking about performance, we're really trying to incorporate every aspect of performance, from the actual way the car drives on a daily basis, how it performs just going down the road when you're cruising, the ride quality. All these things have been greatly improved over what a stock car would have ever been. Our Fast Track front suspension is based around a C6 Corvette spindle and utilizes all our own geometry. There's roughly 100 to 125 components specifically machined or made just for this front suspension. Instead of using stock Corvette control arms, we were able to make significant geometry gains by designing our own control arms. We were able to move the coilover shock location to get the optimal spring rate and motion ratio, which allows for a lighter coilover, thus giving you a better ride quality just cruising down the road. We were also able to sweep back the rear of the lower control arm, which gives you the ability to run a wider front tire without having any interference. You can run up to a 9-inch wide wheel and still have a pretty nice lip on the outside to keep that classic look. The rear suspension is a triangulated 4-link. We use a large diameter 4-bar, fabricated in-house with a high-density polyurethane bushing. We've designed the rear sway bar as a spline bar running through the frame for a real clean installation. It doesn't interfere at all with any exhaust routing. The rear axle housing is a Ford 9-inch. You can comfortably fit a 9 or 10-inch wide wheel in the back with the stock wheelhouses. Or if you want to mini tub the car, you can easily run up to a 12-inch wide wheel with a 335 tire. When it comes to 55 to 57 Chevys, stance is everything. And our customers have a pretty varying view on what they call the perfect stance. We've engineered that into the chassis and offer multiple stance options so each customer can get exactly what they're looking for. Since we've built so many Tri-5s here at the Roadster Shop, we can really help you along the way with the build process. Each chassis is built to order for your specific car, so you're getting exactly what you want in a package that's built just for you. Items like gas tanks, body mount kits, exhaust kits, steering linkage packages. We've got everything really down to a science for these cars. We can really help you out with your build from the chassis, moving on through the rest of the process. When looking into the first-gen Camaro and Firebird market, we saw a whole bunch of front and rear subframes with subframe connectors and chassis stiffening braces added in. After looking at the car, we realized that a frame could easily be made to greatly improve upon the strength and be minimally invasive on the floor and the body when installing it. In most cases, installing our full frame underneath the first gen is often easier, requires less work and less modification to the car than using aftermarket subframes, subframe connectors, and chassis braces.
There's a lot of differences in how we build a frame compared to what others in the industry are using. Where others are using bent square tube or miter cut and welded square tube, all of our frame rails are hand built in-house, start with a inside, outside, a top and a bottom pattern. Those are fixtured in a jig, welded together. This allows us the ability to have a formed flowing frame rail that shapes around the car, has visually appealing lines and curves and bends to it. Something that looks custom that belongs underneath a custom car.
The frame for the first gen Camaros is designed to be mostly a bolt-up to the original body. It utilizes your stock bumper mounts, your stock core support mount, your stock firewall mount, and the stock rear subframe mount that you would have in a normal subframe car. You'll need to add one body mount for the rear of the frame, approximately just in front of the rear passenger seat. A small 4-inch wide channel needs to be cut in the rear passenger footwell to allow the frame rail to pass through. 2 small pockets will also need to be cut underneath the rear seat for the upper 4-bar mounts. Both components can be provided with the chassis as sheet metal filler panels for, again, an easier installation. The rear of the frame rail has tabs on it that will bolt directly into your stock leaf spring hangers to easily line up the body and give you a set point where the back of the car should be. Motor mounts come standard in the chassis, available for small block, big block, or LS motors. Our drop steering arm and steering rack location allows the motor to sit low in the chassis, give it a low center of gravity, and optimizing hood clearance as well as firewall positioning. We have a trans cross member that's adjustable and designed to hit all GM transmissions, manual or automatic. The mid brace that runs across the chassis has a built-in drive shaft loop as well as exhaust ports for 3-inch exhaust. The rear frame rails on this chassis are narrowed to accommodate up to a 12-inch wide wheel with a 345 series tire on the back. The frame rails then kick back out to still utilize a stock gas tank, where in most cases narrowing a rear end to get a big tire requires a narrowed gas tank. The first gen Camaro chassis utilizes our fast track independent front suspension. This front suspension is based around a C6 Corvette spindle and utilizes all our own geometry. There's roughly 100 to 125 components specifically machined or made just for this front suspension. Instead of using stock Corvette control arms, we were able to make significant geometry gains by designing our own control arms, our mount points. We have a swept back lower control arm to allow for a wide tire. Chassis designed to run a 10-inch wide front wheel with a 275 series tire on the front. We were able to position the AFCO billet coilover in an optimal location for the best motion ratio, which then yields a lower spring rate, which in turn gives you better ride quality as well as better handling. You've got positive and negative bump stops in the suspension to protect all your components, power rack and pinion, and reverse mounted control arms for easy caster camber adjustments while you're on the track. The rear suspension on the chassis is a parallel 4-bar system with a panhard bar. We use a strange Ford 9-inch housing, AFCO Pro Touring billet adjustable coilovers, and again all our own suspension geometry, mount brackets, and components. The 4-bar rear suspension is designed to put the power to the ground a lot better than a traditional leaf spring car. The adjustability of the coilovers allows you to fine-tune the ride to really get it where you want for either track or road driving conditions. Also, by using a long lowered panhard bar, it allows the rear end to articulate without binding, fluidly move the car from side to side without any lifting of the tire or wheel hop through cornering. To get a lot of extra strength in the frame, we were able to do a 2.5 by 4.5 inch frame rail. It's made out of 1/8 inch steel. They're all CNC cut in-house on our high-def plasma table.
We TIG weld every component on the chassis. TIG welding takes longer, it's harder to do, but at the same time, it's a better weld, it's got deeper penetration, it's visually more appealing, and when it comes time to do the paint body work side of the frame, it's a lot easier to work with.
Each chassis is built to order for your specific car, so you're getting exactly what you want in a package that's built just for you. Yes, it is a part that's going underneath your car, but at the same time, a show car should look flawless from the top to the bottom. We've added various design touches just to really dress up the car and give it more of that custom feel instead of a utilitarian production piece of metal.
Putting a full frame under your first gen F body is really going to give it a solid platform or foundation to base your car off of. The strength of the frame allows the suspension to do its work instead of having the body and the frame flexing. You're going to gain supercar performance, greater strength, greater daily drivability, and just all around better ride and handling characteristics over a stock suspension setup on a car. When the Chevelle was originally designed, performance driving, racing on an autocross or road course were never even considered. If you look at a stock Chevelle frame, it's pretty obvious that it's not capable of handling that type of driving. To improve upon the stock Chevelle platform, we went ahead and built a complete frame front to back. We really weren't happy with trying to brace a stock frame and add on suspension components that really couldn't give us the geometry or the performance gains that we were looking for. We've done extensive testing as well as numerous builds on Chevelles and our Chevelle platform in order to constantly keep raising the bar and building the best product that we can. We started by building fully boxed 10-gauge steel frame rails, a structural center cross member that ties in and triangulates for maximum structural rigidity. We incorporated a front and rear torque box into our new Chevelle frame to eliminate the weak areas where Chevelles are prone to moving or flexing. We were able to bring the frame up much tighter to the body. In fact, our new Chevelle chassis sits a ½ inch tighter to the rocker panel than the original frame, so you have virtually nothing hanging below the rocker panel on your car.
There's a lot of differences in how we build a frame compared to what others in the industry are using. Where others are using bent square tube or miter cut and welded square tube, all of our frame rails are hand built in-house, start with a inside, outside, a top and a bottom pattern. Those are fixtured in a jig, welded together. This allows us the ability to have a formed flowing frame rail that shapes around the car, has visually appealing lines and curves and bends to it. Something that looks custom that belongs underneath a custom car. We TIG weld every component on the chassis. TIG welding takes longer, it's harder to do, but at the same time, it's a better weld, it's got deeper penetration, it's
visually more appealing, and when it comes time to do the paint body work side of the frame, it's a lot easier to work with. Each chassis is built to order for your specific car, so you're getting exactly what you want in a package that's built just for you. The rear frame rails have been narrowed to accommodate a 12-inch wide wheel with up to a 345 series tire. The chassis utilizes all your stock body mounts, bumper mounts, and core support mounts for a true bolt-on application. The only modifications that will need to be done are to a trans tunnel, depending on the transmission you plan on running, as well as a slight drive shaft tunnel modification on the 9-inch rear ends. Our motor mounts are available for big blocks, small blocks, or any series LS motor. Motor mounts have been specifically located in reference to the firewall, so no modifications are required there either. We've redesigned the center cross member to allow the exhaust to drop out without removing the cross member. At the Roadster Shop, our feel is the car needs to look as good as it performs. We go to great lengths to make sure our chassis have as much design and visual appeal in them as they do performance. In our new Fast Track front suspension, we've made several changes over the previous Chevelle chassis. Our Fast Track front suspension is based around a C6 Corvette spindle and utilizes all our own geometry. There's roughly 100 to 125 components specifically machined or made just for this front suspension. Instead of using stock Corvette control arms, we were able to make significant geometry gains by designing our own control arms. We were able to move the coilover shock location to get the optimal spring rate and motion ratio, which allows for a lighter coilover, thus giving you a better ride quality just cruising down the road. We were also able to sweep back the rear of the lower control arm to allow a wider wheel and tire package in the front, up to a 10-inch on 68 to 72 models, and a 9.5-inch on 64 to 67 models. Standard rear suspension on our Chevelle chassis starts with a heavy-duty Ford 9-inch with 31 spline axles. We then utilize a parallel 4-bar with large diameter bars and AFCO's Pro Touring adjustable coilovers. To elevate your Chevelle to the next level of performance, we developed our new independent rear suspension system. The Roadster Shop's Fast Track independent rear suspension system is based around a Ford 9-inch center section with C6 Corvette outer spindles and hubs. A key element in the design of our rear suspension was utilizing a true upper and lower control arm. By utilizing this upper control arm, it adds great strength and support to the suspension system, taking the stress and wear off the driveline components. Competitors are using modified versions of street rod and show car rear ends, originally designed for lightweight hot rods. They're prone to flexing, which can cause wheel hop under braking and acceleration. Our Fast Track independent rear suspension is a true performance piece, not a hot rod suspension dressed up to look like a performance piece. We set out to design a wide range of products that will work for the Ford Mustang owners. Welded crossmember designed to use the existing Mustang frame rails, inner aprons, core support assembly. The next step up from that would be our complete front clip, which is designed for a little bit more of a custom application where you want to upgrade some strength, probably get rid of the inner fenders, the core support that came from the factory. You're looking to build more of a custom pro touring car. The full package that we offer is a complete chassis for the Mustangs that incorporates our fast track front suspension with a true full frame rail design, and then a Ford 9-inch with our triangulated 4-bar rear suspension out back. This kind of ties the entire car together and gives you a complete package from front to rear. Our new fast track independent rear suspension is available on all chassis or can be purchased separately for vehicle-specific installations. The stock 1960s Mustang suspension inherently has some problems that don't work too well with today's performance standards or a lot of the larger motors that are being put into the cars. Our fast track front suspension is designed to be a true performance handling suspension. We went with the C6 Corvette spindle that will be available drilled in the Ford bolt pattern. From there, we fabricated our own upper and lower control arms in order to optimize the suspension geometry, create better caster and camber curves, give you better ride quality, allow for larger wheel and tires with the correct offset to fit a traditional muscle car look rather than a high offset flush mounted wheel like you would see on a new Corvette. We've incorporated a spline sway bar that is housed through the frame with sway bar arms that run tight to the body to again allow for a larger wheel and tire combination up to a 9-inch or 10-inch wide wheel with inner fender modifications. Steering is a quick ratio power rack and pinion. We've designed this rack to work with the new modular motor oil pans as well as a traditional 302, 351 oil pan when using a rear sump application. This lets you sit the motor nice and low in the car without having any clearance issues. It eliminates the shock tower, gives you a nice clean inner apron panel, and again we've added some design elements to create a little bit of a custom touch, not just a flat piece of sheet metal. These bolt into the top of the fenders in the stock location, and then you can scribe a line down the side, which will give you the area that needs to be trimmed out for installation. The front crossmember is designed to drop into the stock frame rails and then plug weld through several of the holes located throughout the chassis. Crossmember is located by the bolt holes in the front that will bolt into your existing sway bar mount on a stock subframe. Our complete Mustang front clip is designed to take your Mustang really to the next level. Mustangs are inherently prone to rusting and rot in the front ends, and a lot of customers don't really care for the stock inner fenders or aprons that are in the Mustang. Our front frame rails are designed to give far greater strength over the stock stamped sheet metal frame rails that originally came in the car. Made out of 1/8 inch 10 gauge steel, fully welded, fully boxed. They're designed to tie into the factory torque boxes for added strength. To install one of the front clips, you'll have to cut the front apron off the car and front sub rails. The new front clip then slides over the existing torque boxes and front section of the frame rails and is plug welded in place. This ties everything together for a strong, solid platform. Each chassis is built to order for your specific car, so you're getting exactly what you want in a package that's built just for you. If you're looking for the best of the best for your Mustang projects, we offer a complete chassis designed with our Fast Track independent front suspension, 9-inch rear, or Fast Track independent rear suspension. This chassis is designed to be minimally invasive in your floor, so you can retain 90% of the stock factory flooring. It also offers the strength of a full frame, which will then be combined with the strength of a unibody car, giving you a rock-solid platform that can handle anything you throw at it. The frame has integrated torque boxes just like the factory floor pan and front sub rails would, to again add greater strength and handle the torque of today's high horsepower motors. Rear rails are designed to follow the stock floor while accommodating up to a 12-inch wide wheel with a 335 tire. You can also retain the factory gas tank in its stock location. The strength of the frame allows the suspension to do its work instead of having the body and the frame flexing. You're going to gain supercar performance, greater strength, greater daily drivability, and just all around better ride and handling characteristics over a stock suspension setup on a car.